This is a tutorial on color grading F-log footage. Disclaimer, I am not a professional colorist, cinematographer, or videographer. I'm just a hobbyist trying to grow my skills. Feel free to use the comment space below to add to this tutorial. If I miss a step or if you are able to better explain one of these steps, let us know. Sounds good? All right, let's get going. I'm using Final Cut Pro for this tutorial, but these steps are pretty simple and easy to follow in programs that allow for color grading. The tools may look different or have different names, but they're all the same. I'll be approaching this tutorial with two steps. Step 1, I'll be creating a base correction, and step 2, I'll be creating a secondary correction without using any LUTs, but taking the time to adjust as I go. If you know how to adjust the shadows, saturation, and highlights, then this is pretty easy because that's all I'm really doing. I have a project open and the files downloaded and the clips down on the timeline. As I mentioned in this video right here, which is also linked below, you can join me over there when we are done going over this tutorial. Think of color grading as shooting with a natural flat profile or log if you have it. You will have to do a few edits in the end by doing a base color grade and add and balance out the shadows and midtones, highlights, and saturation of the image to bring the image back to life. Then you can add a secondary correction to stylize the footage without it falling apart, or push the files as far as you can before it starts to break. So let's get into step 1, the base correction. I like to use the color wheels and tone curves for all my grades, but first let's start with a simple tone curve or S curve. We're going to add contrast to the image, but leave room for bringing down the shadows and midtones. Second, let's go back to the color wheels and start with the shadows. Don't want to go too low to keep from crushing the shadows. Third, we're going to lift the highlights to bring up the image, not too bright though, or not too high. And fourth, we want to lower the midtones a bit to make the contrast of the clip look a little more natural. And now the image looks alive. It's a workable image. Like I said, it's pretty simple. Now let's move on to step 2, the secondary correction. Okay, so the image looks good where it is. From here, I would add an adjustment layer on top of the base correction and color correct the skin tones if needed. I'll add another curve adjustment to lift the shadows, pull over the highlights a little bit, and drop down the midtones just a bit, and then add another color wheel to adjust the shadows, midtones, and highlights to where I want them to get the look I generally like for my videos. This is all based on preference. I do not use LUTs, and I'm still trying to get to know what I'm looking for in a grade, and the best way to do that is to get in there, play around with everything, and potentially create my own LUTs that work for me. This is not an in-depth tutorial for color grading. This is just an explanation of how I approach color grading log footage. In general, it took me a while to get to this point of understanding that color grading or coloring footage is the same as you would color a photo in Lightroom. One day I'll find the color I'm looking for to get the videos I want to look consistent. But you can check out this video right here to learn more about color grading. That is it for today. I want to thank you for joining me. Stay awesome.